Hi, my name is Barbara Elliker. My birth date is January 20th, 1952. I'm 63. I was raised in East Prospect at the other end of the county and lived here and there in between. I have two brothers and I have two sisters. My oldest brother was killed when he was 17 in a car accident. I have two children, a boy and a girl, and I do not have a spouse. I went to high school at Eastern York High School. I went to Empire Beauty School after high school, and the main occupation I think that I enjoyed the most was doing hair, but I also enjoyed working for the newspaper company.
Hello, I'm Tammy Waples. My birth date is 12/21/72. I am 43 years old. I live in York, Pennsylvania. I also have lived in Phoenix, Arizona, and briefly on Long Island, New York. I have one sibling that is 3 years older than I, and I have one child. He is 15 years old. And I have a spouse. Yes, we've been together 20 years. School, I attended the York County Area Vocational Technical School. Other schooling that I had, I did go to college. I did graduate with an associate's degree in health science, and I am a registered respiratory therapist.
My name is Autumn Rao. I was born January 4th, 1997. I am 19 years old. I live in Gardners, Pennsylvania, which is in between Carlisle and Gettysburg. I've lived there all my life. I have one older sister who is 23. I have no children, no spouse. I went to Carlisle High School. I now am attending Elizabethtown College. I'm a freshman, and my main occupation is I work for Central Penn Nursing in Lancaster, and I'm a personal care aide.
Describe your schooling experiences as a child and a student.
Okay, our elementary school was grades 1 through 6, all in one school, and we walked to school. Then the next level, you were 7 to 12 grades in the high school. We didn't have a middle school back then. And I guess the elementary part, as far as I remember, was, a typical school. I wouldn't say I loved school, but I didn't really hate it. I just did what I had to do because I knew I had to do it. Now, when we went to the high school, then you got more into your different classes as far as the home ec, that kind of thing. Um, that was sort of interesting. I mean, I enjoyed the cooking and the home ec type thing. Well, of course, we didn't have like wood shop or any of that for the girls back then.
Did you like the home ec stuff just because you liked it yourself, or did you feel as a woman in society like you were expected to know how to cook and sew and
Well,
keep
I
the
think
house?
back then, like I said, we didn't do much of anything else. I mean, I learned bookkeeping and all those kind of things, but um, as far as learning the home ec part of the cooking and the sewing, that sort of thing, I think it gave you an idea of what you would like to do. Like, I wasn't big for the sewing thing as much as I was the cooking part of it. And I mean, they separated you a lot in certain things. I think back then they did. I mean, it's just the way it was, and you didn't question it. Where today, I think, you know, the girls and the women go through a lot more and can take different things and pursue different avenues because, you know, they have come that far where back then you didn't.
Is there anything that you wanted to do in high school or a class that you wanted to take, but either you weren't allowed to or you were kind of pressured not to because you were a girl?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I would have liked to taken like wood shop, that sort of thing, because I like to work with my hands and I like to do things like that. But like I said, you didn't hear that back then.
How, if at all, were your schooling experiences particular to your gender and generation?
Well, like I said, it was just the way it was, and I think mostly you just took it and went with it, and it wasn't questioned. Where I think later on in life things changed a little bit, and these people started questioning, why can't the girls do this or do that? Well, even today they say, like, a woman and a man can both do the same job, but the man always gets paid more, and that I don't feel is fair. If the woman can do the same amount of work, the same thing as the man, they should be equally paid the same, not just because she's a woman that she don't get as much.
Did you go to beautician school because that was something you wanted to do, or yet again was that maybe influenced because you're a woman and the time that you grew up? Or was that just something you were really interested in?
That was something I was really interested in, was going to beautician school, learning to do hair. And of course, by the time I went, I started and then I had stopped for a period of time because I had my first child, and when he was a year old, I went back until I got through school. It was a lot of studying to do, and when you're out of school, I think any period of time where you're not studying, you forget how to study. You know, that was a little harder, I think, on a person then going like from high school right into college. I think in today's world, the teachers should encourage the girls that if they want to do a certain thing, that they definitely can do it. A lot of them, of different situations, they, you know, well, she's a girl, she can't do that. And I think the teachers need to, I think, teach the kids, and especially girls, a lot of your basics from years ago. That makes more sense as to how they study and do and to do things in the world for today. I don't think they are prepared enough to go out in the world once graduation's done. I don't think they're ready. Anybody is ready for what lays ahead. That you know, you think you know, but do you really?
Do you think women and girls are treated differently than boys? Why or why not?
Well, today I don't think they're as bad as they were back when I was in school or whatever, growing up. you were a girl, so you didn't do certain things, and like you were a guy, you didn't do certain things. Like you would never see guys going into, say, a nursing program or take home economics as a major, that sort of thing. Where I think today they more or less are more lenient on that and allow you to cross over to whatever you want to try to be.
How do you think your culture affected your education choices?
Well, like I said, I liked school. I wasn't totally thrilled with it, but it was something that I had to really work at to get decent grades. It didn't come easy for me, which I had no intentions of wanting to go on to college. And maybe that's the reason I picked the trade that I did, because I wouldn't have to go to college. I only had to go, you had to put in 1,250 hours, and we had test books, and we had a lot that we had to learn. It wasn't a matter of just going and seeing how you cut somebody's hair. It was a lot of theory to do with that, which was hard because, like I said, I wasn't a fast learner. As you're brought up, this is what you do, and this is what you do. You don't do this, you don't do that. And it just all pretty much stuck that way for quite a few years.
Did you ever think about questioning it?
No, I didn't. I don't. I can't say that I did.
Not at the time, you didn't really
No.
see it as that, but now looking back on it, you
Oh
see it.
yeah. You look back on it, you see, even today, like my generation, they look at kids today and think, wow, if we'd ever did this or did that, we wouldn't be here to talk about it. And I think it was just the way it was. You were taught that this is what you do, this is who you respect and who you don't, and you didn't question it. And the rest of us didn't talk about college. I don't think as many people pushed it, and maybe the teachers didn't push it, but they didn't really talk a lot about college back then like they do today.
Describe your schooling experiences as a child and a student.
Schooling experiences. School was very challenging. Socially, mostly, because originally went to York Suburban School District, which at the time was a school district for mostly the wealthier kids in the area. But our house was literally on the wrong side of the railroad tracks. So we got picked on a lot because we didn't wear the right kind of clothing and the right kind of shoes. So we got picked on a lot, the kids from our neighborhood. So a lot of bullying that today, is considered a lot of bullying. But back then, they didn't even consider it that or take any mind to it. So it was always a struggle, especially socially. But as in education, I had to work twice as hard just to get a mediocre grade because of certain learning disabilities that back then they weren't diagnosed and accommodations weren't made for me to get the help that I needed then to overcome the learning disabilities. So,
What were some of the best parts of your experiences?
the best part, I would say, of course, friends. Best part, and changing schools when I left York Suburban and went to York County Vocational Technical School. That was some of the best. That was one of the better decisions I had made. But that was one of the best things I did, and memories, because you were surrounded with more people of, back then it was more people of your culture, your clique.
What made you choose to go to York Tech as compared to a different high school?
At the time, the motive was to, number one, get out of the high school I was in because the bullying was so bad, and I was doing really poor in school at York Suburban. Was not a fan of school at all. And when I say I wasn't a fan of school, like, not a fan. I struggled greatly with school, just like I said, to get C's. So I just made the decision that to go to the vocational school, that way I could at least get out of my home district school that I was in. But on the flip side, I had seen my brother go through the vocational school and seen all the benefits that he had gotten from it, from going to a technical high school and learning a trade.
What were some of the worst parts of your experience?
One very vivid memory of the worst part was coming home every night. Of course, homework, but homework from the time you got home until you got it done, you were sitting at the table. And it was hours upon hours every night. That is one very vivid memory of school, that, the amount of homework that was required for us to do on top of it.
Do you think the homework that you had added to your education, or do you think it just made you more resentful of it because of the struggles that you were enduring?
Yes. I mean, I'll honestly say, of course, just basic writing and arithmetic, and depending on what you do in life and further your education, yes, the basic biology I took was helpful. The chemistry and all of that really helped with my groundwork for my profession. But if you're not going into that type of profession, taking those classes in high school, like, in the real world, are you really going to be using that if you're not taking a profession that's going to use that? And we weren't taught in high school, like, realistic things. You weren't taught how to balance a checkbook. We weren't taught everyday stuff of just juggling everyday life, financial stuff, and just preparing for the future.
Why did you want to be a respiratory therapist?
Basically, if you can't breathe, does anything else matter? Like, I shadowed, I was a little candy striper, I shadowed, I did the nursing aid thing, and trying to determine which aspect of medicine I wanted to do. And yes, physical therapy has its own aspect and outlook, and speech therapy and so forth, but you're not going to get to any of those therapies if you can't correct your breathing. Because obviously, if you're not breathing well enough, you don't need those services.
So, what advice might you give to teachers based on your experiences? And is there any specific advice you might give to teachers who work with girls?
I would just say for teachers, just to be aware. I don't just to be aware of different personality changes, or students are struggling. I guess the question is, are they really trying, or are they not putting forth effort? But definitely that's a huge key factor. But also, it doesn't matter at what age. I still believe there's a lot of students that struggle with school, that it might not be a learning disability per se, but it could be any grade where you realize that the way they have been taught all these years isn't working for them. And it just takes that one special teacher to pick up on it, because everybody learns different.
Do you think women and girls are treated differently than boys? Why or why not? This could be in society or in education.
Oh, I definitely think women and men are treated differently in society in general, especially once you get out in the workforce. Men are definitely viewed different than women. Number one, they're paid more, which if I'm doing just as good of a job as a man, why should they get paid more? But it's, even though women still work and they have been working outside the home all these years, there's still that stigma that women don't belong out here working full-time hours.
So even though women are allowed to work in society, they're still also responsible for the house. So they're kind of pulling double duty.
That's your job, yeah. It's still that mindset, well, it's the man's job to go to work and bring home the paycheck. Well, because of the way society is, and of financial responsibilities and what everything costs, it makes it necessary to have two incomes. But yet, it's not viewed as a level playing field. It's still, well, okay, you got to work full time, but this is also your full-time job.
Describe your schooling experiences as a child and a student.
Well, I went to Mount Holly Elementary School, and there were always about 25 students in each of our classes, and there's normally 2 of each grade. And then junior and senior year, I started looking into the medical field and got to get into the medical field some, doing different exploratory programs at hospitals and volunteering, doing internships, which then led me to college for me to know that I wanted to be in the biology department and into the medical field.
What sports did you play when you were in school?
In elementary school, I started off with t-ball and then softball and then basketball. And then when I hit middle school, I gave up softball to just focus on basketball. And then I gave up basketball and I started playing volleyball in 7th grade and played that till my senior year. And then 8th grade, I played lacrosse till my senior year.
Did you ever think about playing baseball instead of softball? Or do you feel like you were kind of pressured into playing softball because you were a girl? And that's just kind of how things were? Or was that your own personal choice?
I just never considered playing baseball because that's just, and it was always just like baseballs for guys and softballs for girls. That's just how it was. The lacrosse teams were definitely very rivalry at my school. The boys were always known to be very cocky, and they always did super well, especially like my junior and senior year in high school. They always did really well. So then like everyone looked highly upon them, and then the girls were just like kind of like sucky. And I personally, once I started playing lacrosse, I would have rather had played guy lacrosse than girl lacrosse, but that's just wasn't.
Why would you have rather played boy lacrosse than girl lacrosse?
Just with girl lacrosse, you weren't allowed to be as physical as guy lacrosse, and even like they could have put pads on us and let us be as physical, but that's just not how it is. Like you only can wear goggles and mouth guard, and that's it. So you can't body check or anything like you can in guys lacrosse. All the teachers that I had were really supportive of what I wanted to do and wanting me to strive to be able to get as far as I possibly could in the medical field.
And what do you want to do in the medical field?
I want to become a physician assistant.
And what does a physician's assistant do?
A physician assistant is a step down from an actual physician, but is higher than a registered nurse. And depending on what state you're in, you can prescribe money, perform surgeries, basically do all the tasks that a physician can do. Just you have someone who is above you yet and is like kind of your supervisor still.
Were you ever encouraged to just go and be a nurse instead of doing what you wanted to do?
A lot of people said, whenever you hear physician assistant, a lot of people don't think that it's as high up as it is. They hear the assistant part and they think of like medical assistant, and so they think like, oh, why don't you just become a nurse? Like if you're doing that, why don't you just become a nurse? But then really it's like higher up than a nurse, even though it's not, technically might not be as much schooling. But
do you ever feel like the boys got more in-class help than the girls?
the boys seem to, depending on what class it was, my math classes, the boys asked more questions during class than the girls did, but the girls were the ones who came after class and like after school for help.
Growing up in the generation that you did you feel like it was an expectation to go to college? Like you didn't really have a choice?
Definitely. That's just, I mean, there's definitely people that you knew that they weren't just, that's just what, they weren't going to go. That's just, but it was more so the people that didn't seem to care about school, just barely got through, like passing. And so you just knew that that wasn't in their plan. But normally most of them had something that you didn't necessarily need to go to school for that they were planning on doing like after high school.
For the people that you knew in high school that weren't going to college, did you get a feel from your community and the staff at your school and your peers that it was more acceptable for boys not to go to college or for girls not to go to college?
Definitely more acceptable for boys not to go to college. Boys seem to always have the option of, we had like different vo-tech programs at school, and so we had carpentry, we had, I don't even know all of them.
But they were primarily boys
like
in your
mechanic
class were
with
going
mechanical stuff, yep. And mainly all the people in them are boys, and so it was looked weird upon a girl if a girl was in one of those classes. I had a girl who she was in one of them, I don't remember which one, but she was the only girl out of like 15 boys that were in it. Motive was one, there was no girls in it. Not one. And I personally had considered, when I was in middle school and heard about them, I considered doing them because those are traits to me that it would be great to know the things that you learn in automotive just for your own personal use, but it wouldn't help me in the direction that I wanted to go.
What advice might you give to teachers based on your experiences? And is there any specific advice you might give to teachers who work with girls?
They should give girls the same expectations they do the boys. They don't expect as much out of the boys as they do girls normally. And so if the boys who struggled in class mainly, they just always expected them to be like that. But if a girl who normally did decent, if she like bombed one test or something, the teacher was right on her tail wondering like why, and it was just like, so I just think that with the whole college thing, I think girls should be given mentally and emotionally the same support whether they go to college or not.
Were a lot of the teachers at your schools girls, like women?
Yes.
Do you think that the women teachers expected so much out of all the girl students and wanted them to go to college and go on and do other things because maybe they didn't want them to get stuck in a life they didn't want to be in, like it's happened historically where women are expected to do certain things, and for example, like they're supposed to keep the house and that's kind of their job is to be a wife, and they wanted more. So do you think maybe that's why they might have had higher expectations and more accountability for the girls?
I think that definitely could have played a part in some of them. My anatomy teacher, senior year, she was like kind of older, and so she kind of had the mindset that it doesn't matter whether you're a girl or not, like you shouldn't just be expected to just stay home and do the cooking and cleaning, like you need to put yourself out there and you should strive to be whatever you want to be, even though you are a girl. Like don't let, even if you do like go off and get married, like don't let that hold you back.
Do you think women and girls are treated differently than boys? Why or why not?
I think it is definitely, I mean, obviously it's gotten better than it used to be, but I still don't think that it's like it should be. I didn't know until just the other day that like even in the military there's still things that women aren't allowed to do that only men can do. And I'm sure there's reasons for it, but I still think that they should be given the opportunity no matter what it is. So I definitely think, and that's even with like things like automotive and just the more manlier occupations and tasks that's just not looked upon as being that women and men can do it. And that's same with like becoming nurses. You hear like someone say, oh yeah, my nurse like contacted me about a prescription, whatever. You automatically think, oh, it's a female nurse, but it's very well could be a male. It's just how people think still.